You can catch up with all our shows by visiting our YouTube channel or by listening back at ttradio.org. Don't forget to like and subscribe to enjoy more live education conversation from TTR. We hope you enjoy this show.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to Points of View. And we've got a lot that was going on in the world of education. How are you guys today?
All right.
All right, thank you. Yeah.
All things
Happy that it's
considered.
Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sounds good. Okay, right. Well, let's start with perhaps the biggest story of the week, which was the Francis review, the report from Becky Francis on the national curriculum, which has all sorts of implications. And I think, we could talk about this probably for 2 or 3 shows, but actually, there are some headline figures that maybe we focus on. One of the things that struck me was, of course, rather depressingly and predictably, the media headlines in certain sections of the press were, it's dumbing down again, dumbing down classes, dumbing down education, which, of course, is complete nonsense. There's nothing in there that would dumb down standards at all in any way, shape or form. And I think that's a reference to 2 things, which might be useful points to start off with, which is, first of all, the fact that there is a proposal, a recommendation to reduce slightly the amount of time spent in exams, so that it would be reduced by something like between 2 and 3 hours overall in an exam season, as we all know, that lasts for over 30 hours. So that's one. So slightly reducing the time, and secondly, the scrapping of the EBAC in it's certainly in the way that it's understood. So no EBAC targets. No targets for the English baccalaureate, either in entry or in terms of achievement. Although, to emphasise that suggestion is not to change that for another couple of years. So these things will be introduced in September 2028. And then there's quite a lot of other things as well. But if we focus on those 2 just to start with, I thought, and then moved on to some other things afterwards, that would get us going. So, What about scrapping the EBAC? What are people's views on that?
Great.
It's been a long time coming. That I think that but we've been so fixated on it for quite a period of time, and it's really shifted out some other subjects, and I think marginalised some students and their achievements. So I'm in support of that element of it, certainly.
Absolutely.
What about you, Rae?
I'm glad to see. It's interesting because as a classroom teacher and a pastoral lead, which I used to be, it's never really affected me because I teach a core subject. So I teach English. As an English teacher and as a previous head of year, I never thought about it. I've never had to think about EBAC. It's never been on my radar at all. I know that out there in the distance, there are people that care about a certain measure that has absolutely zero bearing on my life whatsoever. But listening to my colleagues from particularly the art subjects and their feelings on it, and them seeing the shift that they feel has resulted partially because of the EBAC's introduction has been really, really sad. And so to hear that that's no longer going to be grinding people down and disaffecting children and removing arts from schools is a really positive move as far as I'm concerned. But as I said, my daily life, nah. But I'm glad for others. Glad for the kids.
I mean, that's the irony of it, that actually the EBAC was a matter of supreme irrelevance for students and for most parents, actually. And in fact, most employers. It was only relevant for schools because of course, schools were held to account for the percentage of young people that were being entered for them, but never mind past them. And it did therefore skew the way that curriculum options were set up, so that there's been a big increase in the study of the subjects that were in the EBAC, and then a significant drop off in subjects like design and technology, like drama and music and so on. Certainly up until the last year or so. I think people got wind in the last year or so that it was probably on its last legs and therefore was pretty much doomed anyway. But because of that, the creative arts have subjects, people representing those arts have been very concerned about the lack of emphasis on their subjects, and also RE. I know colleagues in RE who were slightly bemused that RE wasn't counted as an EBAC subject, and therefore, a lot of schools turned their back on RE GCSE. The numbers tend to be often quite small. What do you got? Any
off of that, Carl? Sorry,
please.
Another point in the report was possibly making RE mandatory, or having all schools do RE. And I know some people are going to think that's a bit odd based on conversations I've had with people. I currently work in a Church of England school, and I'm surprised it's not mandatory. I'm surprised the entire full course RE is not mandatory for everyone.
I'm sure it was.
Everyone can do it. My
was.
previous school, which is not affiliated with any religious organization and is incredibly religiously diverse, every single student, with the odd, there's always rare exceptions. A kid arrives in April of year 11, but every single student took the full RE course, and they had consistently one of the highest results of any subject, any department. Every single student did it, and they did absolutely brilliantly across the board there. And that was a comprehensive school. We just had students who did it from year 7, knew they were going to take it in year 11, and they had the interest in other people and learning about other cultures and developing their own. And it's very, I'm saying they still do this. It's very debate focused, and they learn how to share their own views and culture and opinions and ideas, and ask questions in an appropriate way, and learn about other people that they go to school with. Like it's one of the most valuable experiences, I feel. And I say this as a non-religious person myself. Yeah. This has nothing to do with my beliefs or where I work currently. I really believe that every single student should do the full RE course. And I'm shocked that it's not more common. Especially in my school right now.
I think on that, Rae, obviously there's a push in the curriculum review as well towards oracy, and so that debate, it becomes all the more important with that push towards oracy. And I think just as a society, we seem to be leaning towards the less tolerant as well, and so it becomes all the more important that we are teaching students to be understanding of people who are not the same as them, and therefore to just promote a little kindness and understanding in society. I remember when it was compulsory a few years ago. It doesn't feel like that long ago. Maybe it was longer ago than I think. I remember some of my students coming into my class, because I'm an English teacher as well, and saying, "Miss, do you think we should be made to do RE?" Because they were expecting me to say, "No, I don't think you should." And I said, yeah I do. I absolutely do think that you should be made to do RE. I think it's actually one of the most culturally significant subjects that you can do. So yes, I do think you should be made to do RE. I don't disagree with that.
No, I mean, to be clear, my understanding is that they're not saying that GCSE RE would be compulsory, but the current situation is peculiar on a number of fronts. In that RE is it's required that schools deliver the locally agreed curriculum, the locally agreed syllabus on RE, but it's not specified how they do it. So, at Key Stage 3, commonly schools do offer some kind of RE course. but at Key Stage 4 far less so. And I think the suggestion is now that they definitely do offer it Key Stage 3. It definitely becomes part of that, and then it's got to be offered as a GCSE. Whether or not people take it up, I think, is a slightly different thing. But there's also this wider obligation that schools had, which sits rather oddly, that there is a requirement to, for example, have a daily act of collective worship, which was then, I think, slightly amended and has been largely ignored ever since it was first introduced. And it's because of this because of this historically close relationship between the church and education, and obviously the fact that there are a number of schools that are faith-based schools. But I mean, we call it philosophy and ethics simply because, I mean, like yourself, Ray, I'm not at all religious. But it's a study of how people engage with the big questions and how that affects people's lives and culture, and that's surely got to be a good thing. So I would agree with both of you on that. Yeah. Nobody was going to give a defense of the EBAC and say, no, we must keep it. Nope. No, not heard anybody else do that either. I'm sure. So if anybody wants to make the case for the EBAC, they're very welcome. I mean, the only thing I would say is that there is a view, and I think it's got good reason behind it, that languages are going to drop off a cliff. Because a lot of schools have felt that because you've got to offer language is one of the EBAC subjects, and in that EBAC bucket, as it's called for those who are in the know with these things, it was history, geography, and a language, and a lot of schools therefore encouraged young people to do languages more than they had done. I think, interestingly, that plateaued quite a few years ago, but nevertheless, they did. And now that they don't, and we know that languages are notoriously, in fact, statistically harder to get grades in than most GCSE subjects, the likelihood is that schools will stop encouraging most young people to do languages, and there is a danger that languages will become a bit of an endangered species in the secondary curriculum. Got any thoughts about that?
I think we need to change a lot of the dialogue around languages teaching as well. I think it's got quite a lot of I think students tend to love it at primary level, don't they, when they're doing their French lessons and things like that at primary. But by the time we then come to secondary, there's a real shift in how they feel about their languages lessons. And I don't think there's enough discussion around how empowering speaking another language is and what doors it opens for you. The ability to travel and work in other countries more flexibly, it will open up the job market for you if you can speak another language. And I don't think we talk, maybe because I'm not a languages teacher, maybe that's why I'm not aware of those conversations taking place, but they are so negative about it. And I wish I could go back myself and take my languages lessons more seriously. You can't put an old head on young shoulders, can you? But as an adult, I've gone back and I've tried to learn French. I've tried to learn Spanish. It's much harder when you're older. You're much less of a sponge. But they are just so negative about it. And I do think if they're not encouraged to do it, it will drop off.
So I have a theory, a totally unsubstantiated theory, but it's based on conversations I've had with students and seeing the same students who are reluctant to speak in English or present anything. A lot of the kids that don't want to give whole class answers or stand in front of a room and talk are the same kids that are uncomfortable trying to make foreign sounds come out of their mouth in front of other people. And so I feel like a lot of the switch, a lot of the shift from between primary and GCSE, this Key Stage 3 developing dislike of languages comes from awkward teenagers not wanting to make fools of themselves and not wanting to say the wrong thing. And I think it's the resistance to speaking in front of people, but you add it, because I even felt like that. I loved French and I understood the value of French and I wanted to learn it, but I was still awkward. I still am. I go to France and I can understand what they're saying, but I will not reply to them in French. Like I can't make the words come out of my mouth because it's like, I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to look like an idiot. And you get awkward 13-year-olds. I'm not saying that explains everything. It doesn't, but I think there's a significant chunk of students that if they didn't have to do the speaking component, they would find it a lot. They do it with a lot more enthusiasm, and obviously that's impossible. So I don't know what the solution is, but I feel like that's where a lot of it's coming from. So it's not just that they don't see the value of it. It's that they're deeply uncomfortable in their awkward 13-year-old bodies, and they don't know how to handle that. And they'd rather just not show up to Spanish than conjugate a verb wrong in front of other people. So that doesn't answer any questions, but that's my theory anyway.
Yeah, that makes an awful lot of sense, because let's face it, being a teenager is difficult enough in English.
Absolutely.
Without anything
It
else.
certainly is. Quite a few don't communicate in any discernible language. English or otherwise. It's not. But I think one of the things is that for me, it's always been a problem in English-speaking countries, and I say problem in quotes, that a lot of people don't see the point. For them, in pretty much most places they go, English is understood, or they can make themselves understood. Nearly everything internationally is delivered in one or two languages, which enable people, therefore, to access those. So unless they have an insight into the world of people's jobs where they really do benefit from being fluent in certain languages, and most of our young people won't do. Certainly most of our white indigenous British people won't have done. Therefore they will tend to say, well, this is hard, what's the point? I'm not going to use this in my career, so therefore I can't be bothered. And I think the trouble is with that then languages becomes the preserve of independent schools, doesn't it? And school or just a relatively small group of rather more culturally aware and privileged young people. But on the other hand, it is true that a lot of classes have been dragged through languages painfully over recent years. The teachers have loathed it because the kids have made up their mind by the age of 13 or 14 it's not for them. And the kids certainly hate it. And is that a good thing? And I don't probably think it is. So I think I think the answer has got to be, if any answer for me, that you start young, because that's when you learn languages. You're most receptive when you're young. And the trouble is with that's a resource issue. And in this country and in most English-speaking countries, there simply aren't the teachers. There aren't enough of them and enough curriculum time to focus on that.
Yes, but Carl, I could teach Key Stage 2 Spanish, and I can count to 20. I can learn it. I could learn it and I could do it. Yeah. It's not hard.
Is that older. Are you interviewing for a position therefore?
All I'm saying is introducing more in Key Stage 1 or Key Stage 2 is not necessarily impossible. No,
I would like to think you're right. I really would. If there's a will, there's a way, definitely. What do people think about other parts of the report? I mean, Liz, you mentioned oracy, which I think is quite an important part of the report 100%. And has not been picked up on a lot in the media, in the immediate media reaction to it. What are your thoughts about that?
I mean, Rae will have seen this as well. There has been such a downturn in the amount of speaking and listening focus. And we have reached a stage where doing any kind of speaking and listening activity, and in English, we do have explicit tasks associated with that, or task now as it is. It used to be more than one. And it is like pulling teeth. They do not want to do it. You enter into email debate with parents. They can't talk in front of the class. They can't do this. They're too shy. They're too anxious. And it's because we're not doing it frequently enough, and they're not exposed to it frequently enough. And it's such an important life skill that I think they think it's just that we're testing them in that moment on that skill at that time, on that's it, and it doesn't really matter. Oh, I don't really care about that anyway. But they don't understand that this is something you'll use in an interview. It's what you use in daily life, in your interactions with people. And I think in an increasingly digital world where they have a lot of non-face-to-face conversations, that I mean, I watch them now. We've got a much stricter phone policy at my school now, and their ability to converse with each other without their phones is quite alarming. Like, they can't sustain long conversations with each other. I remember at my last school when they did that, and one of the boys said, I'm supposed to talk to someone for half an hour without my phone. I was like, how can you not talk to someone for half an hour? I can be with my friend for 12 hours and still talk in the car park afterwards. How can you not sustain a conversation for half an hour? And so it's really, and obviously there has been a drive on oracy, I think, in schools without this curriculum review, that it has definitely picked up, but it's nice to see it being brought to the forefront and people understanding, because I think if it's national as well and it's coming in the headlines, parents might understand that we shouldn't be making excuses for our children, and we shouldn't be trying to stop them from having these opportunities and do it. Yes, it might feel a little bit painful. Yes, they might be shy, but it's such an important life skill. You're not going to get through life without having to sit in a meeting and converse with people, without having to go for an interview and conduct yourself orally. It's crucial.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point about it, because my school's been doing this for a couple of years, and I've always made students do presentations because it's valuable. So even when the government decided it didn't matter anymore, I made them do it. And when they drag their feet, I was like, well, you're gonna have to do this. You're gonna have to do this big presentation for your GCSE. So you got to get used to it now. Exposure therapy, babes. And they usually got on with it, and they're usually fine. So I've always done it, but getting to the kids to do the GCSE speaking exam, and as you said, Liz, getting into these email arguments with parents, and parents not appreciating that sometimes, little Johnny needs a bit of a push and has to do something that's actually challenging for the greater good, for his own benefit. I think maybe if it's coming from somewhere other than us, these helicopter parents that shield their child from every minor inconvenience might actually realize it's important and be a bit more supportive. That would be nice.
Do they want the first time they speak in front of somebody to be in an employment situation when they're trying to
apparently
get
they do. Apparently they do.
That's insane.
Yeah. No, I mean, I couldn't agree more with you both. I think it's a vital skill. I'm a big fan of it. I think that there has been a lot of tokenism when it comes to oracy in schools. We'll put on the odd presentation or debate, but it's really nothing sustained or structured. And in actual fact, people have as you said, Liz, I think in the digital world of the future, one of the things that's most definitely the case is that people will need to communicate orally. That's going to be happening a lot. So, and I don't know about you guys, but I think sometimes, probably mistakenly, falsely, a lot of people equate the way you talk with your intelligence. They think that if you are articulate, you are clever, even if that might be a bit of a mask and you're not. Do you think that's a thing?
Absolutely.
Oh, I'm just thinking of Alan Carr in The Traitors saying you can't out because they've got a better vocabulary than you.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, for all you know, Stephen Fry's a blithering idiot.
Don't, Carl. You've crossed a line.
I'm afraid I have, and I know he's not. And Stephen, we love you dearly. We love you dearly, and I am certainly not any of those things. But any views on, because there was an entitlement to triple science, and there's been people in that sort of science education world that have got views on that. Anybody got any thoughts about that? And
I just don't understand. I mean, there are two things that jumped out at me from this list as being logistically enormously problematic. And one of them was that they're not going to finalize things. They're not going to finalize the curriculum until spring 2027 and then expect people to start implementing it from September. Like, do they understand how schools work? That's a bit funny. And the second thing was great. I love the idea that more people should take triple. Like, please, we need better science understanding in this country and the world. Great. Where are they going to magic up the physics teachers from? Where are they coming from?
In 6 months, if they're not finalising anything until April 2027 or teaching September 2027.
Yeah, I just don't understand how any of that is going to functionally work. I feel like a lot of this is being set up, and maybe there'll be pushback and things will be delayed and stuff will be covered and things will be half done. And it just feels like it's going to be extremely messy in certain subjects in certain areas for a year or two. And I wonder if people who've come up with these ideas, these wonderful ideas, and this questionable timeline, do they have any concept of how long things take to organize and rewrite and run?
Because we've had two major educational shifts in my teaching career. But, we had like the shift to controlled assessment, which happened, and that overhaul, and then the shift to 100% exam after that. I've only been a teacher, 20 years is quite a long time, but I've seen two major curriculum and assessment shifts in my career. How do we not know how long these things take and how messy they can be without strategic planning? And how do we not understand that?
Sorry, Liz, carry on.
I was going to say, because government keeps changing. That's why.
Yeah, well, that is true. And education has been a football for as long as I've been in education, and I go back further than either of you. So I think it's about the fourth major curriculum change, and there have been a number of others of a smaller nature in between. So I completely echo your sentiments in that regard. I mean, to be fair, I suppose they're giving a timeline which would mean that next September the exam boards would have some proposals on the table for you to choose from, as it were, the menu, and then you wouldn't actually start teaching them for another year. So you could argue that that's, reasonable, but I mean, I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying they would argue that. But
the recruitment element of it, though, isn't it? Like Rae said, we've been trying for years to try and get physics teachers into the profession. It has been an area that they have thrown bursaries at and golden hellos and all sorts for years. And ultimately, people can be paid better to do better, more attractive jobs outside of teaching. It's not attractive enough for people who have those skills. How is that going to change? We can't just say all children are going to do triple science but not actually be able to provide it. There's no point in them doing it if they're not being taught by specialists.
No.
And that's my concern. Not. That's my main concern, that they're going to end up being taught by non-specialists, more of the same chaos.
Brush up on your physics, guys.
My physics teacher told me that he could teach a brick wall physics better than he could teach me. So I think I'm in the bottom of the list.
He definitely, he definitely touched the nerve there, didn't he? Liz, I think you've got some ads to talk about.
I do. So this show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources. that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit www.hachetlearning.com to explore the full range of titles. And join Bet for the biggest week in education from the 21st to the 23rd of January 2026 in the Excel London. With immersive workshops, thought-provoking speakers, hundreds of hours of CPD accredited content, cutting-edge technology and unrivaled networking, there's no opportunity quite like it for educators. Get your free ticket today by visiting uk.betshow.com, and that's bet with 2 T's. Thanks, everybody.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for that. I just wanted to add one little nugget of info that I only came across in the middle of last week, which was about science recruitment. And it is, in fact, that when it comes to initial teacher training, the recruitment of science graduates has gone up. So physics, for example, is a subject, and chemistry, where the number of applications has gone up over the last year. Now, at first, that seems a bit puzzling because everything we see in education is that you can't get physics and chemistry teachers to save your life. But what was being explained was, if you look at the trends in terms of A-level entry over the last 7 or 8 years, there has been a significant switch away from the likes of our subjects, A-level, English and history, sadly, we would say, but there's been a switch towards maths and sciences, and those people are now coming out the other end of university. So there are a lot more physics graduates than there were 10 years ago, for instance. And that means that there are naturally some of those people who decide that they want to give teaching a try. Plus, of course, the bursaries, which are on for those subjects. I mean, they've been cut for most other subjects recently, which is, I would argue, a retrograde step. But nevertheless, and that helps as well. So maybe there's a little glimmer of hope there for the world of physics teaching, chemistry teaching. I don't know, but it's just a thought. Can I ask a little bit, just while we're on this, about there's now an implication that schools will be required to provide particularly disadvantaged and SEND pupils with an entitlement to certain extracurricular experiences. Have you come across this as part of it?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I thought that that's kind of what pupil premium funding had been used for, or maybe that's just the schools that I've worked in, but I thought that's kind of what was happening already, and that schools were using that funding to enable students from disadvantaged backgrounds to have, we always had with the ski trip at my previous school and things like that, disadvantaged students, money from the pupil premium budget was used to make sure that those students got to go on that trip that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to go on. And it was the same battlefields trip. They were, first on the list if extracurricular activities had a limit. The places were offered to them first, theatre trips, all that sort of thing. So I kind of thought that was already happening. Maybe it's just where I've worked, and maybe I'm a bit naive.
I think there's a wide range of the way that money is used, and what types of activities, and whether it's like things go to individual students or groups of students, or, I mean, I've worked in places that think basically if that money's not being spent toward like intervention for subjects, academic subjects, and it's being wasted. I've also worked in a place that preferred to do things that benefited multiple students at a time. But if it was a pupil premium student that, for example, couldn't pay to go on a residential, the money would be used to kind of make up the difference. So I feel like schools have a lot of freedom in the way that they manage those funds and the way that they divide them out. So maybe I don't necessarily think this is a bad thing. I have a lot of questions about this. Like, what is this going to look like? And what do you mean by extracurricular? And how much, like, are people going to have to stop spending the money on things that they're spending it on and then put it toward like a football club. I don't understand. When you say extracurricular, do you mean we have to offer more and give up more of our time, or can the money go to we're paying somebody else to commit? Like, I have I have no objection theoretically, but I'd like a lot more details before I form an opinion. Because on the surface of it, I just think, do we not do enough already? Like, do you want another hour of my week to supervise kids kicking a ball around? Like, how? But that's not necessarily what they mean. I just don't know yet.
Potentially feeds in a little bit to our second discussion as well, the school day and finishing times and being used as childcare.
It absolutely does, yeah, which we can move on to in a second. I mean, my cut on this is much the same as you guys, in that I think there is a good point made here, and it's been made many times before. I mean, the phrase cultural capital has been bandied around for about 10 years in education now, and that's effectively saying the same thing, because there is, of course, a widespread recognition that just having qualifications in and of their own right does not give you all the social advantages that people from more privileged backgrounds often get simply by being around and experiencing things which make them sound more culturally sophisticated and also able to access different cultural worlds, not just artistic, but also sporting and otherwise, which otherwise other people can't do. So there is most certainly a point in that. But I think the questions that we're all asking, aren't they, are where are the resources, and precisely who is going to do this? Because there is certainly no room in your regular teaching force to be adding on even more hours. That's just a non-starter. You might be able to pay schools and pay staff for things they're already doing, but there's got to be funding behind that. And I've seen in my time in education so many initiatives and programs which have funded extracurricular programs, but schools know that they tend to last. They have a shelf life of about a year or two. And you can't invest in something if you know that, or you expect funding to run out in a year or two. You've got to know funding's going to be there at least for another 10 years or 15 years. And then you might start properly investing in it. So I think there's a lot of questions there to answer, aren't there, which, are perfectly reasonable ones, and they haven't been answered yet. But I think, just in total, to draw a line under the curriculum review before we move on to the second topic, I think what we're saying is, and you tell me I'm wrong, broadly speaking, this review is a decent review, and that most of it is reasonable and we would agree with it, but there are lots of questions about how it's going to be delivered, whether the resources will be available for it to be delivered, and so on and so forth. Would that be fair summary?
Yeah,
Except for those year 8 tests.
Oh, yeah, not.
Are you not a fan of the year 8 tests?
Absolutely not. And the way that it's been phrased, this is a tool to help teachers. But what do you think we're doing? Like, do you think we never assess these kids? What do you think we're doing?
Yeah,
Also,
we know exactly. We know exactly where they're at.
Yeah, exactly. I know full well by year 8 what students need support, and just through the assessments that I'm already doing. It doesn't need a formal external.
Like, what a waste of time.
They're going to plow loads of money into to create, which actually could be better spent elsewhere.
Yeah. Do you think it might be useful in terms of addressing the year 8 Cinderella syndrome? I think you know what I mean. It's a bit of a wasted year. It's a bit of a drift year.
Okay, right. I've always said that year 8 are the neglected middle child of Key Stage 3. Right, year 7, they're the babies. Year 9, they're picking their options. They're being very mature and grown up. Year 8, just kind of like they're nothing, and they know it, and they know they're not important, and that's when everything kicks off. But I don't think having some big external government test that is going to suck up all my teaching time because I have to teach to whatever this paper is, rather than trying to actually foster some sort of appreciation or love of literature. God forbid they actually enjoy lessons before GCSEs suck all the joy out of their entire lives. You have to tell me I have to give up my lessons with the one class you can actually have a bit of fun with, to do some government plan, to tell me what I already know and to stress these kids out. What a colossal waste of everyone's time and money.
I just think we've become so obsessed with data, haven't we? And having something to put in a spreadsheet. And I know from being in the classroom that you'll do something and they're like, are we doing a test on this? And it's like, actually, no, we're not. We're learning this because we can, and we can enjoy it, and we're learning skills, and it's okay to learn skills without being assessed on those skills. But we've just created this culture in education that something only matters if it's assessed. And that's the problem. If we broke away from that culture, we wouldn't see year 8 as a wasted year. We wouldn't see, because I don't think any education is wasted. All education is valuable in some way, shape or form, isn't it? If they are loving learning, we are giving them something, aren't we? They're taking something away. If they go home and they talk at home about something that they've learned at school that day, they've learned something. We don't have to assess them. That's lovely that they go home and they go and research something and they come back and they tell you something. That is, learning is a beautiful thing, and assessment ruins it.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. I mean, data is not a destination, is a phrase I sometimes use. You know, we educate for life, not just for numbers. But you know, I mean, that's a point of view that it will give year 8 an incentive to work towards something rather than a drift and, you know, a kind of nothingness, and make schools put some effort into, you know, focusing on year 8 rather than ignoring them and focusing on the others. So that's the counter.
Which is good. The good thing is they'll no longer feel and literally be in some places neglected. But yeah, I just feel like the cost, like at what cost? And to me, it doesn't, like the maths ain't mathin'.
Did you realise, both of you as English teachers, that they're actually proposing 3 tests? I didn't realise this until this week, that they're proposing the reading test that the DfE announced a few weeks ago, and they hadn't clearly spoken to the Francis Review people, because then the Francis Review people are talking about 2 further tests, an English and a maths test. So there'd actually be 3 tests. As things currently stand, there'd be 3 tests at the end of year 8. And I'm not sure even they intended that. I think there's a bit of communications confusion.
Shocker.
Yeah, as if. Yeah, can hardly manage it. Anyway, can I ask you, what time does your school shut at the end of the day then?
Well,
apparently we're absolute shirkers because we finish at 3.
How disgraceful.
How dare you? We finish at 3:10, but
grief.
Intervention sessions and clubs end at 4. But according to our education secretary, that means we're all a bunch of lazy half-wits. You should be sacked. So the
to be fair, I don't think she used those phrases.
I was going to say, is that the Telegraph that actually used that word?
Oh no. Oh, the shirkers word, because the rest of that was just my daily hyperbole. No, that was just me. The shirkers, that was from the Telegraph, and I just tried to pull it up, but because I refuse to pay them money, I can't actually read the article.
No.
Me too.
So I'm kind of limited to the headline, which is, although somebody did type it out, and I did actually see it last week, but I couldn't find it. So Bridget Phillipson, I feel like this is Telegraph speak, will take on shirking schools that close between 3:30 p.m. There's no way she said that herself. No. Education secretary to criticize handful of academies flouting the rules in curriculum shakeup. Now, this is what I'm confused about. I didn't think there was a rule that schools had to be open until 3:30. I thought there was a certain number of hours.
32 and a half hours.
Right. So the actual timing of the day, however schools decide to set that, is up to them. There is no rule saying. So if the issue is that schools are not following the rules and that their day is too short and their week is too short and the hours over the course of the year are too short, then That's the issue. It has nothing to do with ending before or after 3:30 p.m.
No.
So
Yeah, sorry, Rae, carry on.
no, that was my confused face was the end of that statement.
No, I think you confused. Ray's is right, because there isn't any rule, and there is a rule about 32 and a half hours, but not about when you close. What do you think, Liz?
It just struck me as a bit of rage bait, number one. But also, it's just playing into this rhetoric of lazy teachers, isn't it? Ultimately, that's what it is. And there seems to be this mistaken belief, because these are the numbers that are always quoted, that schools are open 9 till 3.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, I don't think I've encountered a single school where the school day starts at 9 o'clock at any point. Almost every school, the previous school that I worked at started at 8:20. You know, there are schools that are starting well before 9 o'clock. And so therefore, if they do finish before 3:30, they're still doing their 32 and a half hours. What is the issue? And do you know what? You don't have to go very far and do much research to find that out. You know, it's on most school websites. You could randomly choose 25 schools and look at their opening hours and see that they're probably doing 32 and a half hours. They just finish at 3 because they started at 8:30.
Yeah.
Again, it feels like we're always in a period of time, aren't we, where people are trying to just win the viewpoints of people with the loudest voices in society. Yasmin said on the show a couple of weeks ago, you know, teachers are so hated in the media. And until that rhetoric stops, that we're not going to be successful. And so you can put as many hours on the day as you like. If you keep making out that schools are the problem, teachers are the problem, because that's it's rhetoric, isn't it? It's not actually got any research or educational value whatsoever.
No. Here. I found myself cheering with both of what you said. I mean, you know, we have an odd situation, because I'm a head of a school, and we do close, as in we don't close, but the normal school day finishes at 4:45, which might seem relatively late. But I mean, we start in the formal school part of the day, as in tutor time, starts at 20 to 9, so 8:40. So it actually works out at 34 hours. But here's the rider. We do this Monday to Thursday, and that's because I say to staff, I don't want you to do any meetings after school. There are no, apart from senior team, there's no other meetings Monday to Thursday that you're required to be at. By all means, do extracurricular stuff, but you're not required to be at any meetings. Then on a Friday, rather, we finish an hour early at 2:45. Okay, and then we have another hour and a half of meetings and training and so on, which actually works quite well, because it means that the kind of stuff of the week is out the way and people can just think about, you know, what they're doing. So that works pretty well. But of course, in theory, if this headline were correct, and I actually don't think it is, I don't think Bridget Phillipson said that. I think this is Telegraph speak. I think this is newspaper framing. But if that were true, then all of a sudden closing at 2:45 on a Friday would be a bad thing, and that we'd be told off for it. Now, I clearly think that's nonsense, and I don't think that's what she meant. So I think there's a lot of media hype to this one, personally.
Yeah, I agree, and I love that. Sorry, I'm just my head's somewhere else, because your breakdown of the week and how it runs. I'm thinking how great that sounds.
Thank you.
To have that, like I would stay a little bit later to not have to do any meetings before or after school, and then just do it on a Friday once the week is out of the way, and I'm not thinking what lessons I have to plan for tomorrow. That would be wonderful. And for schools to have the kind of flexibility to do that works for them, I think is super important. I've also been thinking in the background, about a school I worked at that finished at like stupid o'clock. It was like 2:30 or just gone 2:30 or something. And as great as that was for people who had roles within the school where they could just like jet off home at that time, I'm like, how did we meet the 32 and a half? I don't really understand how that worked, because it was not like we started at 7. But anyway, yeah, I just say, I like, leave schools alone. Just leave them alone. Let them do what works for them and their staff and their students, and they're like, who cares? This is either ridiculous newspaper framing or micromanaging to the nth degree, or a combination of the two. Just leave schools alone to do what's right for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, it's not on any educational basis. So what, for a secondary school finishes at 3, they're going to be forced to stay open until 3:30. What, you're adding 5 minutes onto each lesson of a 6-period day? What's being gained by that?
Nothing.
It's just completely pointless, and it dials into this idea that school is actually a childcare service, which we are not. We're here to provide an education. And
wow, I saw another article. And it didn't save it. And I feel like it was just some bitter opinion piece. But they were complaining again about how school finishes 2 hours before the workday does, or an hour and a half, or whatever it is. And why don't schools stay open longer? So I feel like it was immediately after this came out that someone else had an opinion about it. And I'm just because we're not childcare. Like, we're not your babysitter. That's not what we're here for. And rather than expecting children to stay in school for insane amount of hours,
because that's convenient for you.
Maybe you should ask why you're being forced to work insane amount of hours. Like, I think we're framing this entirely wrong. Like, maybe your job is the problem. Maybe our adult workday is the problem, not the kids' education. And we're not your babysitters. So yeah, I feel like everybody's got an opinion on this, and every parent has an opinion based on their own miserable life circumstances. But the government just needs to leave schools alone.
Because also the children who need the most care, because when we're talking about the older children who actually potentially could cope with a longer school day, they can go home independently. They're not reliant on their parents to pick them up or whatever. They can walk home, they can get wherever they need to. The ones who would be so adversely affected would be our 4, 5, 6-year-olds who cannot do a long day. It's already long enough for they're exhausted by the time they get to the end of the day. It's a lot managing all that learning and social interaction, and it's very overwhelming.
We're not free childcare, and it does come from that thinking, I think, or it plays into that. But to be fair, I do think this story has been exaggerated or whipped up by the media, and I believe this government and the previous government have both reinforced the expectation of 32 and a half hours. But beyond that, any sort of arbitrary time in an afternoon, surely it's the school's decision whether they start at 8:30 or finish at 3:30. Because localities change. Another thing is relevant here, that while you were speaking, Liz, I was just thinking, our school is in a very rural area. So apart from probably about 10% of the students, everybody else has to go home on a bus or by car. They couldn't walk home. It'd take them a couple of hours. So you have to have you can't have that system, unfortunately. So you have to kind of build that into your thinking. But in a city situation, you've got a different set of scenarios, and so there's got to be that flexibility to allow for those different situations and reflect the local context, rather than just try and do it in a one size fits all.
And on that bus idea, there are schools in rural areas who stagger the end of their school days between each other to manage the bus situation as well, with the companies that are serving the different schools. So it does come from a logistical perspective sometimes as well, that, one school might finish significantly earlier than others, but that provides the opportunity for then that particular group of students to be somewhere before the next round of buses goes to a school that's 2 miles down the road or whatever.
Absolutely.
And we've got to look at our infrastructure and how we can cope with it. And again, where's the money coming from? If you're gonna demand this, okay, so how are you funding it then?
Yeah, ideas are free, but actions cost money. Yeah, no, that's true, isn't it? Liz, I think you've got some ads to read for us again.
I do. I just have one this time. So this show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit www.hachetteLearning.com to explore the full range of titles.
Wonderful. So we're coming towards the end. There's a lot going on in education at the moment, isn't there? There's a lot of announcements, a lot of stuff happening.
Yeah.
I feel like I said on our show this week, I feel like someone's putting a coin in the education secretary and it's just like, say something. So something else is announced and then something else is announced. And it's just like, and I think I've just got really jaded. I'm just kind of like, okay. Whatever, we'll see.
You do. You get very sort of fatalistic, whatever will be and all that, don't you? I mean, then there's the fun of Ofsted that's just starting its pilots. And that's, well, I mean, that's obviously another show. But
judgments that aren't judgments that are judgments.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's one of the things that I think is also unhelpful in schools is that there has been, certainly over the last 10 or 15 years, in my judgment, a tension between what the Department for Education say and what Ofsted say. And they aren't necessarily in any way on the same page. And, and interestingly, this week, the curriculum review came out. And that wasn't entirely, the DFE then came out afterwards and said, well, we agree with most of this, but there's some bits we don't agree with. And Progress 8 was one of them. They said, oh, we are going, because the review said, didn't it, we're not going to really touch Progress 8. We're going to leave it. And then the government came out and said, well, DFE came out and said, we are actually going to reform Progress 8. It will be Progress 8, but it won't be quite as you know it. And I thought, well, that seems like, well, you'd like to think they'd all be talking to one another, wouldn't you?
You'd like to think.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Hey, yeah, okay. Right, so on that philosophical point, I think we'll probably wrap things up there. So yeah, great to catch up with you guys today, and have a lovely week.
Thanks. Bye.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused